Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the launch of Humane Justice. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Iman Haji, and I'm Khulisa's Senior Evidence and Impact Officer. And for anybody not familiar with Khulisa, since 2007, we have worked with over 6,500 young people in schools, prisons, and the community. Our wellbeing programs help excluded and marginalised young people develop the social and emotional skills and positive relationships they need to thrive. We upskill the adults in their lives to create nurturing environments around them, and we also work to change systems and practices that hold young people back from reaching their full potential. As part of the Monument Fellowship, we've worked with 7 partner organisations to bring together this book series. As you know, Humane Justice is the 4th in the series, and Lisa Rowles, who's on this call with us, is Khulisa's Innovation and Design Director, co-edited this book with me. Lisa joins me in welcoming you to our launch event.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's great to have so many friends and colleagues joining us. Iman and I are incredibly proud to bring this book to you. It's been a ray of hope during a really challenging year that brought us COVID-19. The observant among you will notice that one of our speakers has changed. We're delighted to be joined by Brenda Burungi, who replaces Jane as our second lived experience author this afternoon. We're incredibly grateful to Brenda for stepping in at short notice, and to everyone who's contributed. And you'll hear more from me and our authors later. Iman.
Thanks, Lisa. Just before we kick off, a bit of housekeeping from me. As you can probably tell, we are recording this session to share with you and those who can't make it later on. So if you're a bit camera shy, please do turn your camera off. We've also asked everybody to mute themselves just to avoid disruptions as new people join us, but we will be taking questions through the chat box, so do let us know your thoughts and any questions you have there. We'll monitor this and share your questions with us in the final Q&A panel later. We'll also be doing Mentimeter polls and word clouds with you to ask for your input. These will appear in the chat box and on screen. So when they do appear, please follow the link and let us know what you think. To check this is working, we've got a Mentimeter link that we'll be sharing on the screen now, and one I'll post in the chat box to let us know whether you've read the book. So the Mentimeter link I've just shared in the chat box is here. Let us know if you've read the book, if you're interested in reading the book. Let's see if this is working.
So all you need to do is just click. There we go, it's happening.
Yay.
Amazing.
It's good to see that is working. And also, please do use our hashtag Humane Justice throughout this event on social media to let us know your views about the event and the book. And while we're doing this, now that the housekeeping is over, I think it's time that we get started with our event. Just a personal kind of message from me is I think putting together a book at any time is a learning experience, and none more so than in the middle of a pandemic that changed the way we do everything. Just one example is the fact that we're launching this book with an online event this year, rather than at the South Bank Centre as we do every year, surrounded by the fantastic art submitted to the Khulisa exhibition. But despite the challenges of a global pandemic, we've managed to put together a fantastic collection, and there are so many people to thank for helping us. Everyone here is already at the top of that list. We have a really insightful afternoon ahead of us with introductions from Lisa and Mark, who I'll introduce in a minute. We have 2 readings from the book, and later on we'll have an open discussion about the themes raised in Humane Justice. So let's get started with a short introduction by Mark Woodruff from the Wallbedding Charity, formerly known as the Monuments Trust. Mark initiated this fellowship and the ongoing creation of this set of publications. Mark.
Thanks, Iman. It's absolutely thrilling to see so many friends from over the years, and it's a real testament to Monument's work and the way in which we collaborated, and I think it achieved so much together. It's wonderful to see you. For those of you who don't know Monument Trust, it was founded in 1965 by Simon Sainsbury, and it has always had a theme of creativity as well as social renewal. And in the early 90s, when the government decided that prison works, suddenly, well, over a little while, a period of through the 90s and through the 2000s, prison numbers started to rise and rise and rise, and reoffending and going back to prison really got worse, and the numbers got higher, and there was less and less to be done with people in prison. The imprisonment was there, but where was the resettlement? Where was the recreation of people as functioning people in human society? And it really struck a chord with the trustees of the Monument Trust, Simon especially. And he was particularly concerned for young people getting caught up in the justice system, being imprisoned by routine as a way of dealing with social problems, only to see them going back again and again and again with fewer and fewer prospects each time they came. And this rang a bell with Simon and his partner Stuart, who's also a trustee of the Monument Trust, which closed in 2018, and he now leads the Wool Beating Charity, which is tying up the legacy of the Monument Trust, because they knew that their relationship, their life would, if they were different people, would be more likely to lead to them being in prison. So there was always a sense of compassion and feeling that something must be done. But more than that, it led to the understanding that being cruel to people, being punishing to them, treating their lives and behavior as problems and blame was only going to be very short-sighted. And what was needed was something that was far more constructive, far more persuasive, far more engaging, far more appealing. Something that would excite a desire to live and to be the best, to hope for the best, to enjoy the best. Something to make life worth living, and something that would enable those young people to make a contribution to society, not just turn their lives around in that cliche, but so that they could make the best of themselves and give the best that they had to offer. Exactly 20 years ago, I went to Kerslow when it was housed at Whiteley's in Bayswater, and I saw a picture there, and it was painted by a prisoner at HMP Swaleside, and it's called Hello Lovies, and it's behind me here, of Sir John Gielgud, who by any reckoning, I think, was the greatest Shakespearean actor of the 20th century. I'm a big fan, as you can probably tell. But this picture, which it has pride of place on my walls, tells me everything that is needed and worthwhile in making a criminal justice system work positively for people. Because allied to that picture was the beginning of the work of taking Shakespeare into prison and turning imaginations round. And just last night, I went to a performance of young people who've been prevented from going to prison, young people whose lives have experienced cruelty and lack of compassion, and yet who've produced this amazing theatre company in which they perform Shakespeare in their own way. They write new Shakespeare, so to speak, out of their own experience in such engaging and positive ways, going into school. Some of those young people have got jobs in Hollywood. Some of them have got jobs in the BBC. One of them was in EastEnders. Another one was in Star Wars. But whatever output they took, all those lives have been turned around because they had received kindness and compassion, and they're giving it back. I just want to say that in building this fellowship, we were trying to continue the work of the Monument Trust. The work that we've done in stone and in art is tangible and there forever. But what about work in the lives and the hearts of people? We wanted these amazing 8 charities, together with all the other networks that we're so privileged to work with over the years, to come together to answer some of the big questions in a creative way, in a hopeful way, because we know that whatever your view on criminal justice and the prison system, kindness, compassion, and hope are always better than the alternatives. The alternatives may be momentarily or politically or socially satisfying. They may treat ills in the very short term, but what lasts what really take hold of people's hearts and minds and lives and possibilities are compassion, hope, and kindness. This book is an amazing achievement in the lockdown that we've been through. I really take my hat off not only to the logistical powers of Lisa and Iman, but also to the way in which they've captured people's commitment and engagement and creativity in this. I want to pay tribute to all the fellows in the Monument Fellowship who have grouped around this idea of what we do along the journey of an offender, hopefully to make sure that as few people as possible can ever be tarred with that terrible brush, that terrible name, but they always have the possibility of being happy, creative, productive, fulfilling members of society. That's what we wanted to see in these 5 years after Monument Trust closed. This is what we want to leave in this amazing collection of essays, and the three before it and the one that will come after it. We want to leave this behind. Your views, not just our feelings, your lived experience, your expertise at knowing what to do, your considered wisdom. Whatever you think, we wanted all this to be gathered together. We want this to be the monument to Monument Trust, as it were. We want this to be the lasting expression of the compassion that Simon Sainsbury felt when he saw that something had to be done and things could not be left as they were. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to Khulisa. Thank you for everything that you put into this most pressing area of need in society. Thank you for your part in making the world so much better a place and so creative and so hopeful. Thank you for your kindness.
So much, Mark. I think I speak for Lisa and I and every single member of the fellowship to say that we're indebted to you for your commitment and your support for this series of publications, and especially this year more than any other year. I think for Lisa and I, your encouragement and advice has been really invaluable to us, and we couldn't have imagined doing this without you. Just before I hand over to Lisa now, I'd like to direct you to the question you see on your screen, which I will also share in the chat box. It's really a question that's at the heart of this book. When you think about the criminal justice system, what are the first words that come to mind?
Do just click on the link in the chat box and follow the instructions, and we should start to see a few different words coming up on our screen shortly. So here we go. And just to say that we will be repeating the question at the end of the session, because it'll be interesting to see if any of our reflections have shifted as a result of what we share this afternoon. I'll just give it a couple more minutes, for a couple more seconds to see what else we get.
And just to say, actually, the bigger the word, the more times it's been shared, which is really interesting, I think, for us to see.
Yeah, definitely. So it does look like so far, broken punishment and injustice are very much people's views of our system, which is actually not that much of a surprise. Harsh and punitive also seem to have quite a lot of votes. And I think this just speaks to everything that Mark was saying earlier and everything that we see in this book, in actual fact, that our system badly needs some rejuvenation, should we say. I was going to say resourcing, but rejuvenation is probably the most important words. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And it's a joy to be sharing Humane Justice with you. Over the past 4 years, this series of publications has challenged attitudes, promoted new ways of thinking, and sought to generate the will for reform based on practical knowledge and evidence of what works. So we've asked questions about rehabilitation, violence and punishment in the criminal justice system, collating responses widely from those with lived experience, practitioners, academics, policymakers, journalists, and so on. But this year, we decided to link all of these elements together and explore the values that we believe should underpin our system. And so we asked the question, what role do kindness, hope and compassion play within the criminal justice system? We aimed to build on the great work by former fellow editors from the Fellowship who amplified voices that go unheard. So we're proud that almost half the contributions in this year's publication are from those with lived experience, including essays, poetry and artwork. If you've not read the book, their perspectives are in section 1 of the book and their art and poetry punctuates throughout. And you'll get to see this when you read the book, of course. You'll read first-hand accounts of kindness, hope and compassion aligned not to institutions or rules, but to people, to prison residents, staff and third sector practitioners. Their moving contributions highlight how hope heals, kindness reduces the shame that crushes potential, and compassion is often the difference between life and death. And you're going to hear more about that today. They don't shy away from identifying pitfalls. Many cite the lack of true investment in education and rehabilitation within prison that ultimately results in such consistently high levels of reoffending. Many of our authors contributed from prison during the pandemic, and this just underscored for us how critical it is for us to hear their voice, particularly during this period. COVID-19 has severely stretched all of our systems, and yet it's also provided a much needed opportunity to take stock of what really matters as a society. Our authors speak to our shared experiences and perspectives about the importance of human values. The message is clear. Now is the time to foster compassion and hope, for kindness to be the lens through which we rehabilitate to enable people to have a positive engagement in society. So whilst we set out to amplify voices of those with lived experience, we also actively invited disruptive, creative, experienced and evidence-based perspectives from those who work in the system, study it or make policy, providing a wider, practical and systemic view. You'll read about the role of community participation, compassionate custody, problem-solving courts, restorative justice, asset-based approaches, compassionate community policing, it's a bit of a mouthful, and how emotional and relational health injects kindness, hope and compassion into our system. Authors highlight race, intersectionality and the related issues the Black Lives Matter movement has brought to the forefront this year also, and the opportunity this presents for a communal commitment for healing, which is what we so need. Unsurprisingly, it's a frank and often very stark view of what's not working, but equally it brims with practical examples of how kindness, hope and compassion do manifest within our system. Finally, Humane Justice would not exist without our contributors. We've learned so much, Iman and I, from every author. Each of you has our deepest gratitude for your commitment to better the lives of those who interact within the system, and we have such deep appreciation for Mark and all our Monument Fellowship colleagues for their support. We're all values-aligned partners working towards a kinder and more compassionate system, and we thank you all. And finally, thank you so much to our Khulisa team. Without you, this book would not exist. And back to you, Iman.
Thank you. I'm not sure there's anything I can say to add to that, other than to first thank everybody that Lisa thanked already, and to say that I'm so proud to have been part of a project that really gave people a voice, and amplified voices that are often unheard. So next, we're really delighted to share with you The Butterfly Effect by Mr. G. An experienced poet, Mr. G has been performing for 2 decades. He was a poet laureate on Russell Brand's BBC Radio 6 show and was featured on BBC 2's BAFTA-nominated programme, Poetry Between the Lines. On Radio 4, he also presented Bespoken Word, Rhyme and Reason and Poetic Justice about his extensive work on prison rehabilitation. And this year, we were honoured to be able to feature him in Humane Justice. Sadly, we learned shortly before the event today that due to a COVID-19 related family emergency, Mr. G is unable to join us personally to read his poem, but he has recorded a reading for us and shares his thoughts on some of the questions we asked him about in a video later. I'm sure you will join us in sending our warmest wishes to him as we listen to his poem. I'm just going to share the video with you now. Hopefully we won't have any tech mishaps. If you can see my screen, just put a thumbs up, and I will play the video now. Well, maybe now.
The butterfly effect. You can never predict the precise moment when someone realizes their need to change, to accept the song of sympathy, to partake in that alluring elixir of perhaps. which allows them to perceive that which must, and close their eyes forevermore to that which can't. Change usually offers no hand of comfort. It provides no promise of peace, and it rarely relents its secrets easily. It's like that first gear considered to get your first car moving. It makes a whole heap of noise, and it barely takes you from your park position without stalling. But finally, that engine gets put to work. Maybe that's why we fear it so. For it requires duty from our thoughts, a determined decision, so much effort, so little gain, and amidst the coughing and spluttering of your natural aversion to shift, there are strains that whisper in our ear, a creaking challenge to our vain thoughts of understanding, cranking against every secure idea of our nostalgic emotion. Poets often use the cliche of a caterpillar to signify change. And sadly, my friend, I am no different. For consider even the most cantankerous caterpillar, one that remarkably crawls day by day, until a gear shift occurs, prompting a decision to re-emerge as a magnificent butterfly. Still cantankerous, probably even more so, but with flight. Please, stop me if you've heard this one before. For a butterfly cannot perceive its own beauty. The spectrum of its wings fall far outside its gaze. It enjoys the freedom of first flight, but still cannot see itself. At best, it can only appreciate its aesthetics via the kindness of others, who admire such change and offer encouragement, with the applause of compassion. For how else would it ever know to emerge from its stagnant echo? I once gave a speech about the role of a poet during a workshop in Brixton Prison. I spoke of the power of poetry to cultivate the idea of self-love, and how this would instigate change. I remember rambling on about how the greatest choice that we have to make is the decision to love ourselves, and how all positive change will stem from that. But this was Brixton, and even my own poetry needed much searching, because I was soon stopped to fit the description because someone had indeed heard it all before. I remember one of the inmates, he gave me wise caution and said, "Bruv, living is easy. It's loving that's hard. Look around, poet man, and show me where your hopeful wings truly dwell." I looked into the eyes of the other inmates, and I couldn't see them. I surveyed the stern visage of the officers, the maintenance staff, the nurses, the governor, and I couldn't see them. I even recall as I came in and I got off the bus of that familiar stop, and I crossed the familiar road and walked up the familiar path of a black man entering prison. I caught a reflection of my own self within the darkened window of a frustrated car, engine screaming yet stuck in traffic, almost devoid of purpose, yet it held my image well. And I couldn't see them. Was I really walking around this prison with no butterfly wings, no hope, no love, no compassion? Had I forsaken my role before I'd even arrived? Something needed to change.
I think you'll
unmute myself. I think you'll agree. Just an incredible piece of writing, extraordinary. And as a result of delving into that poem, we asked Mr. G a few questions, and he's recorded his responses. And the first question we asked was, what inspired you to write this poem or this chapter for us? And here's his response.
What inspired me to write the poem, The Butterfly Effect? I guess I wanted to capture the mindset of a poet or an artist that goes in on a regular basis to teach workshops where you're trying to bring a sense of positivity or bring a sense of expression within the criminal justice system. But as I'm sure that many others will attest, that you can go in with very high and lofty ambitions, but the prison is a place where there isn't a lot of compassion and there isn't a lot of hope. And so you can go in there gung-ho, trying to, say your little piece and state your little case. And all it takes is for someone just to say to you, okay then, bro, look around, man. What are you seeing? And then you have to pause, stop, and reflect and realize that the change that you're hoping to see, you got to try and be an example of it within yourself. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm writing. I started writing it from that mindset and just tried to explore all the emotions that are within that.
Again, I think I really, and I'm sure everyone else does, link to that credo that he talks about, this belief in the need for change and the difference that hope makes, but realizing that we have to give people a second chance because it changes all the time. So we then asked him about the fact that he's obviously been in the criminal justice system, worked in the criminal justice system for a number of years, and what would he say were his first impressions of the system and how that's changed over the years? And this is his response.
My first impression of working within the criminal justice system, the first time I went in was pretty tough because I saw a guy inside who I knew, and I knew him when he was a kid. So let's say I knew him when he was 13, and I saw him again when he was 18, and he was in on a murder charge. And so it made me really realize that, like, wow, that there's a lot of work for me to do in terms of like my own art form. And I've spent like the last maybe 15, 16 years going into prisons on a regular basis and trying to use poetry as a means to create a dialogue and create, I suppose, a sense of reevaluation with the people that go on my courses. In terms of my impression of the criminal justice system, it's difficult because, I've had very, very intense and deep conversations with inmates. I've had intense and deep conversations with the wardens. I've had intense and deep conversations with the governors. And I realize that everyone is under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of stress. There's understaffing, there's underfunding. It's, we're operating as like a Victorian, things ain't changed much since those times. In some cases, things are worse in terms of, like, say, overcrowding. And so, we're fighting so many battles on so many different fronts. And then with COVID that came in, that was another level of, I suppose, like fear and mistrust. Oh man, it's terrible. So, I mean, I would never say, okay, the fault is in this one place or is in that one place. There has to be a strong effort to try and make the lives for people inside better so that there is a better chance for them to be rehabilitated.
And again, that word Victorian comes up. I think it really is time that we did something about that, hey? So we finally had two other questions for him. And the next one we asked was about the line in the poem when he asks a prison resident about where the hopeful wings dwell. And so we wanted to know if today, does Mr. G think they exist? And this is his response.
Yeah, so in my poem, like, one of the inmates I'm speaking to, he asks me, where do the hopeful wings dwell? And so within the poem, I look around and I say that I can't see them. As much as I can say that going inside is, it's a harsh experience and it's a very sobering experience. There are shoots of hope. There are elements of potential, and those elements do give you a lot of encouragement. I've met some amazing people, right? I've had some people that, on the inside that have really backed me in the work that I've been trying to do. I've met people, inmates on the inside that have really reacted to what it is that I've been saying. And taught me, like, you know, it's that it's each one teach one. So you go in there with a certain layout and a certain plan and a workshop that you're trying to bring about, and then the people that are on the workshop, they then take it to the next level. I've met guards that have gone out of their way. I remember there was one guy in Milton Keynes, man, he, on his days off, he was coming in to help me, to do the workshops, right? Because there was understaffing problems. And, you know, he did it for no pay. So it was like, wow. So you do meet people that really understand that there is a need to offer hope and opportunity to the folks that are inside, because in that way we can help to heal society. If you heal society within the prisons, you can help heal society on the whole.
Again, another really profound response there from Mr. G. I don't think any of us are going to argue with any of those comments. I think, you know, just a shout out to all of those who are in prison now, whether you're a member of staff or a prison resident. This is the toughest time I think we've ever seen, and the resourcing is tight. Yeah, just an incredible place to be. And here's hoping that everyone has that sense of hope. And our final answer was about that very thing. We asked Mr. G, what can we do to make prisons more hopeful places? And here's his response.
What can we do to make prisons more hopeful places? Well, I believe that there has to be a concerted and concentrated effort. And I would say it's got to be from the government down. It's got to be from 10 Downing Street down, right? To really adhere and hold firm to the ideals of rehabilitation. You know, I've got this credo where I say that rehabilitation is like a religion. You've got to believe in it wholeheartedly. You've got to believe that everybody has got the chance to rehabilitate themselves, and everybody should be offered the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves. And so even if somebody messes up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, on Thursday, they might be ready to make that change. And we have to be there as a society to offer that olive branch to allow them to make that change. And so I believe that art has got the ability to transform lives. And so all the different artistic communities and charities that are doing fantastic work on the inside, whether it's poetry, whether it's opera, whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's sculpture, whether it's arts and craft, you know, just something that gives that joy and that belief that there is something better for a person's life on the outside. That belief alone can allow someone to really take a stock, and once they step outside those gates, look for the opportunities to try and really change their lives. And we as a society, we have to offer that hope, because if we don't offer that hope, then all we are offering is hopelessness. And that hasn't worked. We've seen that it hasn't worked. So something else needs to be tried.
Again, back to that credo, that belief in the capacity for change, which links very neatly back, I think, to his poem and the gear shift that he talks about, and the fact that we need to be able to offer that second chance to people.